Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. If you're gearing up for your religious studies exam on Component 3, Judaism, you are literally in the exact right place. Think of this as your ultimate high-yield study guide. I'm really excited to guide you through this material, because we're going to take the complexity of Shabbat, break it down, and structure it so perfectly that you'll be ready for absolutely any question they throw your way. So get your notes ready, and let's just get right into it.
Okay, looking at the agenda, we're going to hit core beliefs and definitions, Shabbat in the home, synagogue services and traditions, the whole morning service sequence, and wrap up with a review of home versus synagogue. Let's do this.
Section 1, Core Beliefs and Definitions. This is really the foundation of Shabbat. Before we even look at the practices, we've got to understand the theological rules of the day.
Now you might be wondering, why does mastering this foundational stuff matter right out of the gate? Well, because you're highly likely to see questions exactly like these on your exam. Things like, describe the Jewish beliefs about Shabbat, or describe the link between God as a lawgiver and Shabbat. Keep these prompts in the back of your mind as we go through the next few sections, okay? Because the framework we're building is going to give you the exact talking points you need to answer them perfectly.
So the most crucial thing for your exam is starting with a rock-solid definition. If you get an essay question, this is your opening sentence. Shabbat is the day of spiritual rest and renewal. But why is it celebrated? You know, it traces directly back to the very beginning, recognizing what God did during the seventh day of creation. God commanded his followers and their households to perform absolutely no work.
And honestly, this brilliantly illustrates that second exam question we just looked at, the whole concept of God as a lawgiver. This isn't just some nice cultural tradition. It's a direct instruction from the 10 Commandments found in Exodus 20. Remember the Sabbath to keep it holy. You can work during the 6 weekdays, but Saturday is the Sabbath to God your Lord. Do not do anything that constitutes work. This command is incredibly comprehensive. It applies to you, your household, and you can't even instruct others to work. This text right here, that's the ultimate source of authority for everything we're about to discuss.
Which brings us to Section 2, Shabbat in the home, strict observance. We've seen the ancient texts, but how does that actually play out in a practical, everyday environment?
What's really fascinating is how that command of no work is practically applied. The core idea is that no creative or destructive work should happen on this day, but notice how this plays out depending on the specific tradition. Orthodox Jews, for instance, take this command incredibly literally. Since using electricity is categorized as work, it's strictly avoided. Actually, let's put that in perspective. That means meals for the entire day of spiritual rest have to be completely prepared in advance before Shabbat even begins. It's a total transformation of the home environment.
But wait, what happens if there's a literal emergency? You absolutely need to know this term for your exam, pikuach nefesh. This is a game changer of a vocabulary word. Pikuach nefesh is the only rule that can excuse Shabbat celebrations. It is the absolute one and only exception to breaking these strict rules of rest. Write that down, highlight it, remember it.
All right, let's move on to Section 3, Synagogue Services and Traditions. While the home is your sanctuary of rest, the synagogue is the center of community worship. So here's your quick overview of what actually happens at the synagogue. While many Jewish people, especially men, might not attend during the week, Shabbat is definitely the main event. Services are held on Shabbat evening, which is Friday night, morning on Saturday, and afternoon, Saturday afternoon. But these times, they aren't just random. These fixed periods of prayer historically correspond directly with the times that sacrifices were offered in the ancient temple. And out of all of them, the Shabbat morning service is the longest of the week, usually clocking in anywhere between 2 and 3 hours.
Let's pause for a second to look at a really great point of contrast you can use in your essays. We just talked about how Orthodox Jews at home use a very literal interpretation of the text, enforcing strict rules like no electricity. But within Judaism, there are different approaches to tradition. For example, if you step into a Reform synagogue, you're going to notice a pretty distinct difference in the service itself. It incorporates much more of the local language and significantly less Hebrew compared to Orthodox settings. It's just a really fascinating look at how different branches apply the exact same traditions of Shabbat.
Okay, on to Section 4, the morning service sequence. This is often the trickiest part of the exam material for students to memorize because, well, it's a long, detailed process. But we're going to break it down step by step.
All right, here is the first half of the sequence. The service kicks off with the Bershat HaShahar, the morning blessings. That's followed by the Psukei Dizimra, which are verses of song containing readings from the Psalms. These early prayers are super important because they're specifically designed to help get worshipers into a reflective state of mind before the main service even gets going. Next up, the Shema and its blessings are recited, followed by the Shabbat Amidah. The middle section of the Amidah specifically celebrates the holiness of Shabbat, really helping the congregation stay focused on God and avoid distraction. And finally, for this first half, the Kaddish is said for the dead.
Before we jump into the second half of the service, we need to define another vital term, the Aron HaKodesh. You have to know exactly where the sacred texts are housed. This is the central sacred location in the synagogue where the Sefer Torah is safely kept and from where it is dramatically removed during the service.
So, let's see how things build in the second half of our sequence. The Sefer Torah is removed from that Aron HaKodesh we just talked about, and it's processed around the synagogue. Then, selected portions of the Torah and Haftorah are read out loud. After the readings, it's pretty standard for the rabbi to deliver a sermon to really help the congregation understand the topic in the Torah that day. Once that's done, the Torah is respectfully placed back into the Aron HaKodesh. The service then starts to wrap up with the Aleinu, which is a final prayer focusing on the duty to praise God. And finally, after the whole service concludes, a Kiddush is usually held. That's a special, joyful blessing recited over a cup of wine.
And finally, Section 5, Review of Home versus Synagogue. This is our last study synthesis to really lock in everything we've just covered.
I highly recommend using this comparison table as your ultimate cheat sheet. Look at how beautifully it contrasts the two environments. At home, your main focus is spiritual rest and absolutely no work, which, in Orthodox homes, physically manifests as prepping meals early and avoiding electricity. The only exception, pikuach nefesh. On the flip side, the synagogue is entirely structured around fixed periods of prayer, echoing those ancient temple sacrifices and studying the Torah. The key actions involve those deep, reflective prayer sequences like the Shema and Amidah, culminating in the rabbi's sermon and that joyful Kiddush blessing over wine. It's essentially two distinct halves of the exact same holy day.
To wrap things up, I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder as you review your notes. Does the strict restriction of no work actually create the ultimate freedom of spiritual rest? It's a fascinating paradox, isn't it? By completely removing the burden of creating, destroying, or manipulating the physical world, literally down to flipping a light switch, does the mind finally have the uninterrupted freedom to focus entirely on God and spiritual renewal? Think about that as you write your essays. You now have the structure, the exact definitions, and the key contrasts to absolutely ace this material. Best of luck on your Judaism exam, and keep explaining the world around you.